V'ato Yisrael, mo Hashem Elokecha shoel me'imoch. Moshe Rabbeinu in Parshat Ekev gives us a rhetorical question, which is rather odd. He's asking, what do you think HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from you? Well, by now, after 40 years in the Midbar and learning Torah with Moshe and Aaron for all that time, they should have a pretty good idea what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from us. He wants us a life of Torah and mitzvahs, a life of chesed and emunah, a life connected deeply to Eretz Yisrael and to Am Yisrael. There are lots of things HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from us. But Moshe Rabbeinu wants to, so to speak, introduce the cornerstone of the Torah spiritual personality. So he says, Mo Hashem Elokecha shoel me'imoch. What do you think it is that ultimately HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from you? And he answers his question by saying, Ki'im le'yira. All he wants is Yirat Shamayim. All he wants is Yirat Shamayim. So first of all, let's pause for a moment. What does it mean by Yirat Shamayim? This is a phrase which is used quite frequently in many different contexts. And it's worth clarifying it just slightly, that Yirat Shamayim itself comes on two very different levels. Because Yira is wrongly translated often as meaning the fear of God. On one level, it means Yirat HaOnesh, in a sense of the fear of getting it wrong, the fear of doing Aveirus, the fear of the consequences of behaving badly. That is on a simple, practical level. That's not what is meant by the ultimate Yirat Shamayim. Psilas Yesharim, chapter 24, speaks about the ultimate and essential Yiras Shamayim is what he calls Yiras Haroimamus, means an awareness and an understanding that we're living in God's world, that we are in the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu every moment of our life. And that is Yirat Shamayim. Right? The Sefer Chinuch, when he counts the six mitzvot tzimidiyot, the six mitzvahs which are constant, they're not fixed to any particular time or place or any action of any sort. They are mitzvahs tzimidiyos. What does he mean by mitzvahs tzimidiyos? He means that's the mindset, the perspective of a thinking member of Klal Yisrael who lives a life of emunah. He has to have this mindset. And the mindset is a mindset of Yiras Shamayim. And that is something which is a cornerstone of everything in the Torah. I'm reminded actually of a few students who spoke to me, I remember many years ago, who had been in a session given by Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Zichron Livracha, my good friend, and he'd been speaking to a whole group of students, I think it was in Oxford, and I asked him, what was it like? I said, it was terrific. So one of them said to me, there was one point in the whole discussion which stood out for me as something most amazing. I said, what was that? He said, one of the students actually had the chutzpah to ask him, tell me, Rabbi Sachs, do you really believe in God? Do you really believe in God? You're an intellectual, you're a philosopher, you really believe in the existence of God? So he paused, apparently, this is what they reported to me, he paused and he said, to say that I believe in God is a gross understatement. What really is true is that I live every moment of my life in the presence of God. Every decision that I take, I'm in the presence of God. Every breath that I breathe and every moment of my life, God is with me every step along the way. And the students were blown away by this. They'd never heard anybody in the academic world speak like this at all. But what he was describing was Yirat Shamayim, to feel in the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if you look in the Moreh Nevuchim of the Rambam, in chapter 3, in Chelek 3, Chelek Gimel, chapter 24, he says that ultimately the tachlis, the ultimate purpose of every single mitzvah's aseh and mitzvah's lo aseh in the Torah is to bring a person to the deepest possible state of Yirat Shamayim. That's the purpose. And interestingly, the Ramah in the Shulchan Aruch, in chapter 1, halacha 1, gives us a direct verbal a citation from the Moreh Nevuchim, the only one in the whole Shulchan Aruch, where he says, you wake up in the morning and Shivisi Hashem L'negdi Samit. You've got to know that you're standing before HaKadosh Baruch Hu when you get up and when you get dressed and when you go to business and when you eat your breakfast. Whatever you're doing in the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is Shivisi Hashem L'negdi Samit, and that is Yiras Shamayim. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, that Mo Hashem shoel me'imoch, what ultimately does God want from you? That's Yiras Shamayim. But there's some very interesting, deeper insights into this pasuk. One of them is to understand what does he mean by the word ki'im liyira. Ki'im implies that it's not much, it's not very difficult. It's just, all he wants from you is something little. It's a diminutive form. Ki'im liyira doesn't really want much, just Yirat Shamayim. That's all he wants. And the Gemara actually, Brachos Lamed Gimel, asks the question in the Aramaic phrase, Otu Yiro Milsa Zutrusahi, is Yiro something small? It's not something small. It's a massive achievement to live a life of Yirat Shamayim. So the Gemara gives a very odd answer. The Gemara says, the Gemara says, Legabi Moshe Milsa Zutrusahi. It was for Moshe something very simple. And you think to yourself, of course, Moshe Rabbeinu was Aboim Yom with HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yom V'Layla. Moshe Rabbeinu hears the Dvar Hashem directly. So obviously Moshe Rabbeinu, but Moshe Rabbeinu, this pasuk isn't talking to himself. He's talking to Klal Yisrael. So why is he saying to them, it's Davar Parshat, it's something simple, it's Ki'im Liyira? So the Kli Yakar says something very beautiful. The Kli Yakar says that what it means that it's something easy, Legabi Moshe, it doesn't just mean that for Moshe, Yirat Shamayim was easy. It means anybody who spent time in the presence of Moshe Rabbeinu, they found it easy. Because of the inspirational nature of being in the close company of a great tzaddik and a great Talmid Chacham and somebody who is living a life of ruchnius, just to be in his presence, that already gives a person a sense of hisroimamus, a sense of Yirat Shamayim. And that is, I think, a very beautiful perush, and it's something which anybody who's been in the presence of an Odom Godel, of a great person, senses. I sensed it in my life. Baruch Hashem, in the 1970s, I had the zechus for a few years to be in the Mir Yeshiva with Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, Zeichat Tzadik Livracha, until he passed away in 1979, I think it was. And during those years, just to see him and to hear him was a bit like sitting at Sinai and hearing Torah Sinai, and just to feel the power of the Torah and the clarity and the spiritual dimension of his teaching and his personality. That's what the Kli Yakar means. That Ki'im Liyira, if you're in the presence of someone like that, Yirat Shamayim is not a foreign concept to you. It comes easily. The Pshuta Shel Mikra, though, why is he saying Ki'im Liyira? Let's move on to the simple meaning of the pasuk, which we'll find in the Ramban and in the Sforno. They say that Ki'im Liyira, why does he say all he wants from HaKadosh, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from you is Yirat Shamayim? The Ki'im relates to the end of the next pasuk, because this pasuk introduces a whole list of things that he wants from you. The Yira la'ava, la'leches bedrochov, lishma mitzvosov, to keep the mitzvahs and to love God, etc., etc., etc. And the closing two words of this two psukim is l'tov loch. In other words, all the requirements that HaKadosh Baruch Hu demands of you, the mitzvahs, and the mitzvahs aseh, and the los aseh, and the tefillah, and the Shabbos, the Torah, and everything, it's only l'tov loch. It's all only for your benefits. In other words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not asking you to do something for him. He doesn't need it. He's asking you to live a life of inspirational life, a life of values, a life of morality, a life of emunah and chesed. That's what he wants, l'tov loch, and it's for your benefit. As the Mishnah famously says in the first Mishnah in Peyah, chapter Aleph, which we say every morning in Birkas HaTorah, Adam ochel perusehem ba'olam hazeh, v'akeren kayemes la'olam haba. That the mitzvahs give us peirus, give us benefits in this world, give us a deeper life, a moral life, a stable life, a thinking life, a meaningful life, ba'olam hazeh, and v'akeren kayemes la'olam haba. But for olam haba, they give us a nitzchi, a life of nitzchias. So it's only l'tov loch. And this is the theme which is repeated several times in the Torah, right, where the Torah says, you should keep this mitzvah, l'man yitav loch v'arachta yamin. In the Aseret HaDibros in last week's Parshat. And repeatedly in several different places, the Torah says the mitzvah is L'man Yitav Loch. So if all the mitzvahs are only L'man Yitav Loch, then it makes sense to say Ki'im, says the Ramban. Because it means HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not asking from you anything more than he wants you to be the best person you can possibly be from a spiritual point of view. And that's why it's Ki'im. And I think this is a most beautiful insight. This is really the bracha that Moshe Rabbeinu is giving us, the idea that Yirat Shamayim is achievable, attainable by a human being. One can live a life of Yirat Shamayim, and that is really the cornerstone of what the Torah requires of us, and that is the great bracha of Parshat Ekev, where Moshe Rabbeinu at the end of his life is giving us the summary and the tachlis of all the activities and the commitments of Klal Yisrael, and in that way bring us closer to our Kadosh Baruch Hu and closer to being able to live a life of Geula v'Yeshua. Amen.